Welcome to the beautiful Oxfordshire countryside and to Broughton Castle, the seat of the Haynes family for 700 years. And you might recognise it from films like Shakespeare in Love, perhaps from TV productions like Wolf Hall. But we're here to investigate a Roman villa that might not be far off in size than Buckingham Palace.
In 1963, a Romano-British lady was found buried in a lead-lined sarcophagus, somewhere over there. Amateur archaeologist Keith Westcott wanted to know more, who she was and why she was buried here. His researchers took him to the field next door.
When you stand in the front, you can see that this is all terraced right down to the bottom.
Where he discovered a huge villa lurking beneath a field of turnips.
The turnips have been removed and the time team assembled. And we'll be using the very latest imaging technology to see if we can find out whether this field really was the site of a huge Roman villa. And of course, we've got just 3 days to do it.
I guess this is the future of the past.
The villa we're investigating is just to the south of Banbury, on the estate of Broughton Castle, a moated manor at the meeting point of 3 rivers. To the west of our site is Swaycliffe Lee, thought to have been an extensive Roman settlement. A network of roads lead to important Roman sites all along the Cherwell Valley. In fact, we're using one of them to access the dig site and our data dome. From the air, you can see the earthworks and the parch marks in the shape of a large courtyard villa. And the geophys team has already completed a survey of the northern part of the field, where we're hopeful that the archaeology might be well preserved. So on here, whereabouts are we?
We're about here now, and we're just starting to see the north range of the buildings, which will presumably continue in that direction. We've got these really peculiar big ditches. Some people think it might be a conduit running into the corner where the bathhouse might be. But the problem with it being water supply is you can see the villas on the top of a slope.
Isn't it flowing in the wrong direction?
It's flowing uphill.
Yeah.
Which,
But a pipe could go uphill.
it could do if it's pressurised, presumably.
This is very curious, isn't it? Almost like a right-angled corner there. So investigating a trench across there, because if it's an outflow, you can often get lots of artefacts being washed away out of the baths, down the plug hole almost.
I mean, you say baths. We're making the assumption, on comparison with other villas, that the bath is going to be in the northwest corner.
Well, it's an assumption. We've got to know, haven't we?
Yeah.
So we're thinking a sort of a second trench across that area there.
I think we can determine how elaborate was the bathhouse. Was it quite simple, quite plain, or was it actually quite ornate with things like painted wall plaster, even mosaic floors? And I guess it's a good place to try and find finds, coins, other kinds of artefact.
I would love to be able to find some coins or anything made of metal, because quite a lot of metal objects are really quite tightly datable.
What I think we also want to look at is the opposite corner. And that is the northeast corner there. And so the range comes up in front of us here.
What you can say is, because of that hump, that very visible hump, that's been made by accumulated deposits, and those deposits are still in the ground. So we've got some depth of stratigraphy under there.
And the other great thing about having all that stratigraphy is the crucial thing we've got to get in our rooms is doorways. We need to know how people are using the building, coming in and out. And a lot of villas, that just doesn't survive, and it looks like it will here.
Although the geophys looks convincing, if there's one thing Time Team's numerous investigations into Roman villas has taught us, it's to assume nothing without digging.
Should we call in the digger? Do you want to come round this way? To trench 1?
So Matt gets going straight away in trench 1, looking for the villa's bathhouse.
I mean, look, Matt, just Roman roof tile just literally lying around all over the field.
That's it.
I think we're going to get it quite quickly. It's almost like that eureka moment when you first take off the brown soil and then you see the stuff underneath.
This is a huge area to geophys, but the latest equipment allows John and Jimmy to move quickly. So they're surveying the rest of the villa field before they can move next door to where the stone line coffin was discovered. Throughout the dig, metal detectorists will systematically search for those useful finds that Helen hopes will yield valuable dating information.
This is a little Roman coin, a late Roman copper alloy nummus.
The coin is a great start because Roman occupation spanned from 43 to 410 AD, and the latter part of this is considered to be the heyday for Roman villas. If the geophys is right, the villa is huge. We're hoping to find out just how big the North Range was by putting in a second trench over the hump that Neil and John identified earlier.
So we're expecting to find the outer enclosure.
Roman building material is scattered all over the surface of the site.
Yeah, this looks like it's been faced. Yeah, potential edge there. And that's just on the side of the field there. There's more building material over there. It's going to be really exciting. We're going to find some really interesting stuff.
And the metal detectorists are already making some strange discoveries.
That's horn of sheep or goat.
Yep.
And it's got this metal kind
Got
of
a weird claw.
insert. Yeah, it looks like fingernails, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean in a really vile way.
We reckon it's an insert which would have held a reed, so it
Right,
would have been
right.
blown.
So we're in woodwind territory, hornwind territory.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a shaped piece of stone, isn't it, there?
Matt is in business straight away in Trench 1.
There's a lot of stone down there.
There's a lot of stone.
Yeah.
Where he's pulling out different types of Roman roof tile.
I mean, this looks to me like a stone roofing slate. So you, in addition to getting ceramic roof, you actually take the local stone and you always like make slates. So stone roofing material, incredibly heavy. You imagine a roof, feel that. You imagine a roof of that. And that's again, quite typically Roman.
But aesthetically, because this is like the sort of tiles that one still sees in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
But how would it have sat alongside those sorts of tiles, which
This probably is a later replacement. I mean, what you tend to get in the early Roman period is roofs made of tile.
Yeah.
Then in the late Roman period, they moved to stone styles, especially around here where the stone is very plentiful.
Yes.
I mean, one of the ideas is it about, in fact, environmental issues? Because actually they're running out of wood to fire the kilns, to make the clay.
Yes.
Is it actually cheaper and more efficient to actually quarry stone than it is to manufacture ceramic tile? But certainly, the fact we've got both ceramic and stone tiles perhaps suggests a bit of history here. We've got to perhaps, you know, we're talking about some time depth.
As the villa collapsed, the rubble would have spread out and been compacted over the years. So it's quite a task to dig through it to discover intact walls and floors.
So this is a large nail which could have been used in the construction of the villa.
The other thing it could be, because it's quite big, is about fixing the box tiles to the wall.
Yes.
But look at that. So that's a Roman nail. That hasn't been seen since probably 400 AD.
Could pretty much rebuild the villa, couldn't you? You got it all together.
But so in terms of the sequence, so it would have possibly been abandoned and then the roof has collapsed down, and so...
Yeah, like you say, it's collapsed down, so we're digging the Roman villa, but in a very compressed version.
Yes.
And I imagine that after it was abandoned, a lot of the locals came along and said, oh, there's some good stone next door. So
Right.
a lot of it has probably been, look in the local church, it'll be half made out of Roman stone. But yeah, all the villa is down here in the right sequence, and we're finding it, yeah, from the roof down.
It's not uncommon for 99% of the building material in Roman villas to have been removed over time. And Derek and Lawrence think they've identified some of it at the bottom of a field in an old barn.
On the corner of this building you can see a stone fence post has been built in as part of the architecture, but some of these stones could have found their way here from the villa itself, which is really cool.
Villas of this size would have been expensive to build and expensive to run, with hundreds of slaves and servants at the beck and call of the landowner. So stewards looking for clues to work out how the wealth behind the villa was generated. Was it a working agricultural estate or a posh private residence?
There's sort of ridge and then a dip behind it, a slight ridge behind that, another dip.
You've got a keen eye.
I've got my special glasses on.
It's like a series of steps, isn't it?
It is like a
down the
series of
valley.
steps. So this is, what's the word I want? Like a sculpted landscape.
Exactly, that's a good word describing it. It's been sculpted by human hands, as it were. It's not naturally formed like this.
Okay.
And it looks to me as if this whole area around here, these earthworks, are telling us a story which might lead us to something like a designed landscape, which goes with a villa.
Right, so these might be the ornamental gardens, essentially.
That's
on
the
a
way.
grand scale.
These are so exciting to me because they are very, if that's what they might be, they are very, very rare indeed.
A good water supply was essential to the workings of a villa, for everything from cooking to bathing.
It's very clean, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's very clean down there as well.
Is it? Yeah.
So we've put in trench 3 over what we think might be the conduit into a bathhouse. And Corenza's working with the local group ITAS, who've been researching the site with Keith for years.
Yeah. So we've got a line of this sort of coming along, more or less like that. And then, can you see we've got this sort of reddish stained colouring there, just sort of patches of it coming around like that. So we want to know what that is. It might be an oven or something, we don't know. And we're not quite sure where this feature is turning back. It should be going like that. So this is the point at which we need to stop, get it cleaned up and have a look at these features and see what they are, for which we need lots of diggers to get it done quickly. So you guys up for that? Yeah. Brilliant, right, your trench awaits. A bit of Samian pottery in there.
Beyond the north wing, there's something on the geophys that could be a ditch or a wall outside the main villa complex. It could be an outer enclosure or the remains of something earlier. So trench 4 goes in to investigate.
Looks like a bit of tile.
Yeah, looks
possibly.
like it. I think we're getting to the top of the rubble now. So
Yeah.
probably keep it at that level and just widen it. Yeah, thank you.
John and Jimmy have finished surveying the main complex, and their results have revealed some conflicting data.
Wow. God, look at that.
Suggesting that the villa might not be exactly the size and the shape that we originally thought.
In essence, what we've got is now we've got the complete east range. Now, the west range is not quite so clear, but there's definitely anomalies going down there, and then a whole complex of things going to the south.
I mean, what is all that stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know. So if we pull the radar in, so this is just one slice of the radar. There you can see buildings in the northern range and in the eastern range. It's not showing a lot of buildings on the south and on the west. Now, it may be because they're at different depths, or it may be they're more damaged. But we've got so many targets now.
Well, what's going on? Because as you rightly say, on the radar, it's not very distinct. So it's almost, let's try and characterise these three ranges in addition to our work there.
There's a bit more to add to that before I think you come to that decision, as it were. If we can have a look at something else, which is particularly in this area around here. What we got here is a LiDAR image. This is showing all the earthworks on the side. There's the villa with the east range there. That's the sort of complex that we're digging within. But up around here, up this valley, we've got a series of stepped ponds.
Wow.
Almost in a cascade coming down this natural valley down here. These are very clear big earthworks.
Stuart's talking about these water systems here. We've got these strong anomalies, and I'm just wondering, as Stuart had said, whether we've got a bathhouse down there.
Or indeed what that is.
Or what it is.
There's obviously a lot of stuff there outside the main quadrangle, as it were. We need to know something about that area as well, Neil.
I'm worried about us kind of endlessly expanding and unravelling things.
And I think we're in danger of spreading ourselves too thinly. So I think let's crack on with what we're doing for the rest of today. First up tomorrow morning, let's review the results and then think about further trenches then.
The new data presents Neil with new targets, as well as new problems to resolve. Magnetometry shows features along 4 sides of a quadrangle, but the radar only suggests 2. So are we looking at a much smaller villa, or have 2 sides been lost? Villas were often remodelled over centuries, much like Broughton Castle, which came into the Fines family in the 14th century and has been rebuilt and adapted ever since.
As a parallel to what's going on at the dig, I'm here up at Broughton Castle to explore its more recent history, only the last 700 years or so, with a family member of the dynasty that's been here all that time. Mick always used to say that architecture is vertical archaeology, so I'm going to look at the evidence.
Martin Fines, a keen historian, has been closely involved with Keith Westcott's investigations.
I know you're here for the villa, but I'm rather excited about showing you this too.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Come in.
And has discovered a number of mysteries in the castle walls over the years, which he's keen to investigate.
So what I wanted to do was show you the Great Hall. Obviously, when you come in, you see this Tudor mansion.
Yes.
But inside, what you've got is this 1300 medieval hall and living quarters 1300 down here, and wrapped around it is the 1550 house.
And there's some amazing sort of arches and things.
Yes, so through here, entrances to the medieval kitchens. In this house, you get all sorts of clues. They're sort of mysteries, really. We don't know the answers, but there's clearly an arch there, some kind of window or entrance hall there, just like here. What's all this about? What did that go to? Why was it chopped off there? I don't know. But this is all part of the 1300 house.
The castle is full of blocked up doorways and hidden surprises.
But what I really want to show you is through this secret door here.
Oh, I like a secret door.
Which is nearly my favourite room in the house.
Telling a story of centuries of occupation.
So the great thing about this kitchen is that you've got 1970 to there and 1280 vaulting above it.
Oh, wow.
We're creating a photogrammetry model to see if we can solve some mysteries and find evidence of a pre-1200 house. And Derek and Lawrence are using laser scanning techniques which give us the ability to move through walls without using a bulldozer. We're into the afternoon of day 1, and vast amounts of rubble on the site are making it tough to identify actual intact archaeology. But we're starting to appreciate the complexity of building the villa on such a steep slope.
Where Mark is now is getting quite deep, but where the top trench is very shallow. So I guess what's going to happen is you're going to have a floor that's going to go along, then you're going to have some steps down to another level, go along, more steps down to another level. So we're going to begin to appreciate how the Romans have used the slope to create a sort of an architectural design.
So at some point we've got to then hit a wall or something that would have helped to kind of brace the earth against the next tier of the building.
That's right, and that's what we're looking for now.
We're over a metre and it's just rubble, rubble, rubble. And we have, though, finally got to some natural geology and what looks like an archaeological feature. It might have been where a wall cut is. So we've got our level at this end, but as Neil was saying, at some point between there and there, it's got to rise up about that high.
Exactly.
So I think what's happened is, if you imagine this sort of terrace, when the villa's been demolished, they've just tipped all this rubble down the slope and it's kind of levelled the whole thing out.
Would you have the prestigious rooms at the top, or would you have them down at the bottom? Are you going to have the view, or are you going to have the benefit of the incline for kind of water and gravity?
You're going to be at the top, so I'm going to be up here having a fantastic view, looking over my building, stretching out below me, but not obstructing my view of that amazing countryside. What you might do, lovely summer's afternoon, you go and have your bath, you change, you dress for dinner, you entertain your friends, and you all kind of sit and you look out across the landscape saying, all this is mine.
I can understand that in this setting.
Before we go too carried away, Neil,
this is poetry.
From an archaeological point of view, as somebody who has dug a few bathhouses in my time,
okay,
I don't think there's a bathhouse in that trench.
Do you not?
No. I shall tell you why. Because bathhouses, they have pili, they have tile columns. They are made out of this beautiful orangey red Roman cement called opus signinum, which is made of ground up tile, and it's very, very waterproof and very solid. There's none of that. There's no tiles. There's nothing that I would usually expect to find.
So where would you then be speculating that on this site we might then find it? Because you'd imagine it'd be with the prestigious bits of the building.
Well, maybe we're going to have to shift. Maybe it's further up the hill even.
Or it could be.
Oh no! Don't
over
don't
there.
do this to me, Neil. Neil.
It could be, because sometimes you do get the bathhouse as a separate, detached building.
So perhaps the bathhouse could be on one of the other earthworks in the field.
So you can see how that eastern range matches.
In the dome, the team are layering the topography with geophys to try to work out where the archaeology is most likely to have survived centuries of ploughing.
And that's where it starts to go across. Yeah. And we've lost it on the corner because of the slope.
Yeah.
So presumably the ditches are going to be deeper here, that's why they're stronger, and deeper there. And that's ploughed away or slipped away.
Yeah. Can you see what's coming up?
You found my wall?
Yeah.
Back in Trench 1, we finally have our first signs of an intact villa wall.
So we actually have now, what's it, 1, 2, 3, 4 stones in a line?
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Another one there.
Oh, another one coming up.
They're lovely. They're absolutely perfect. They haven't kind of wobbled or been knocked or anything. Beautiful line across there.
But the other thing I would like to ask is, if we push further down, will we find a floor beneath?
I think that this might be below floor level.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think this might be a foundation. I can't say at the moment, but I suspect that, I mean, this isn't very rubbly, because if you look on that side of the wall, loose rubble, that might be protecting something underneath it. But here, I don't know if we'll find a floor. I mean,
Mark, can you see another face coming back?
Yeah, we haven't found one yet.
So we've got one face of the wall here.
Yeah.
So there has to be another face about where Mark was kneeling.
Yeah.
And then we might actually have intact Roman masonry going down to that level down there.
Yeah. And so any floor level or ground surface, hopefully, will be protected by the rubble on that side. But this higher up bit might have been kind of ploughed off or scoured off, because it's a little bit higher up.
One of the things I love about this is it gives a sense of the sophistication of the engineering of the architecture.
Oh, I think Mark's got something.
Oh, you've got
there.
is that?
That looks
there we go.
There we go. So that's, how thick's that? That's about 50 centimetres wide?
50 centimetres, yeah.
That's quite a substantial wall.
And tracing the line of the wall further on, it looks like there might be a corner. Further up the slope, the ditch in Trench 3 has yielded some interesting finds. A piece of box flue tile indicates that there was a room important enough to install Roman central heating, and a lovely little find of a more personal nature.
Ah, a tiny spoon! Look at that. I feel like I'm revealing too much, but that's a paltry quantity of pudding I'm going to get.
It does feel like it's makeup or medicine rather than pudding, doesn't it?
Right, yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, pewter, I think, or something like that. So it would have been quite silvery and shiny when it was originally. There's a little bit of a glint on it even now. Beautiful. The handle going off there. I think it's my favourite find so far.
Yeah, yeah.
In the northeast corner of the building, Hilda is beginning to see some possible walls emerging and a tantalising selection of finds.
So we've got some greyware, some Roman greyware.
Right, so these are from pots.
Yeah, that's a nice pot rim.
Beautiful, you can see the rim beautifully.
And then we've got some animal bone as well. Right here.
Are those teeth? Oh my God.
Yes. And then, interestingly, we've got some what looks like box flue tiles with nice grooves in it.
Right, so Carenza has one of these too, from a hypocaust.
Yeah, so that would suggest a heating system, possibly.
And therefore, rich people, big house. Even if we didn't know, rich people, big house, it would tell us what we needed.
But then the real kicker is over here.
Tesserae!
Yes.
Look at that, in loads of different colours.
Yeah. So we've got some red ones, some dark ones, some white ones. And I've been told that this is not natural for this area anyway, so this is
right, so these stones have been brought in to make a mosaic.
Yes, I mean, this has got to be the first mosaic trench that we've got now.
All this information is being fed back to Ray-San and Bridget in New Zealand, where Ray-San has been working on a 3D reconstruction using photogrammetry and the geophys.
And really what I've just been trying to play with is the fact that you're going to have different stages of build with different heights in different areas. But you can really see that fall off between the west and east, and how substantial, as I said, those ranges would be. It's quite a big structure. I think I keep going back to the east and the west ranges. The east range towards the river, you really are going to have steps coming down. You're going to have one of those little gateways and steps to actually change the level between the two areas.
Yeah.
And on the west, to get a single story on that front edge, by the time you've got the depth of the range, you've got to go down another story almost.
Yeah.
Unless you've done a massive amount of earthworks.
So we got some new GPR data from Jimmy, just so that you might find interesting here.
So the two bits that show up most substantially are the north and east ranges, very clearly in the GPR. The western range and the southern range are very ephemeral, if they're at all.
I'll have to think about this now.
I have to be honest, given what you could see, like his crop marks on the field, right from the very beginning. Sorry, Jimmy. I would have thought
you're not the
this
first
was
person
going to be a little bit more robust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's there's probably more missing than we're seeing.
It seems only excavation can really tell us whether we have to downscale our expectations from the four-sided courtyard villa that Keith saw in the earthworks when he first located this site.
So you came here, looked through the hole in the hedge and saw the terracing, I guess, in the hillside here, knowing that the sarcophagus was over there.
Yes, well, walking onto a field like this, all the things that I was hoping for were straight in front of me. It looked like a plinth where it dropped off north and south and terraced right down towards the stream.
You can see those sort of terraces in the landscape really clearly from
really
here,
clearly. So I came back and walked it again, and the first thing I saw was hypocaust flue tile. So there I knew we've got a high status.
And how did you know what that was? Was that from Time Team as well?
No, I happen to have been the technical chairman of the Underfloor Heating Manufacturers Association. So I'm an expert in underfloor heating.
We found hypocaust in all of our trenches, suggesting that whoever lived here was high status. And one of the exciting things about this site is that we have an idea of who this person was. Keith is hoping he can pick up a signal from the lead lining inside the sarcophagus, believed to have contained the remains of a Romano-British lady. The coffin was disturbed by ploughing in the 1960s, and an Unguit bottle that was found inside is now in the Ashmolean Museum. But it's not clear how much of the burial was excavated, whether it was reinstated, or even exactly where it was located.
Is that it, Keith?
That is it. We found her.
Wow.
Well, it's lead lined, so it's given a really big signal there.
Right. Can you tell which way? You know, one of the interesting things is east, west, or north-south?
Yes, it's most definitely coming north-south here.
Right, right.
Because I can tell just from the size of walking back that that's definitely
yes,
on this
it's really
alignment.
long. Yeah.
But because we're on a hillside here, then she's going to be deeper into there. So I'm just picking up the this part of the sarcophagus.
Yeah. She does really seem to be on the approach to the villa. The visibility is just amazing.
And how do we know that she was high status?
Well, it's the stone coffin, really. That's quite a lot of investment. Then there's the lead lining. That's expensive.
Effort.
I mean, and very, very heavy. I don't quite know how we're going to tackle the investigation of this. That's going to be a discussion for this evening, I think.
Okay.
And then she also had this glass bottle.
The unguent bottle.
Yes. Now, what is that? Because I must say, I don't have unguent in my bathroom.
You do have unguent, like a perfumed oil. So, you know, you might use it to make a body smell nicer, a living body, a dead body. And so, yeah, the Romans are mad for oil. They're always, they clean themselves with oil. You pour oil onto your skin and then have it scraped off along with all your grime.
Your unguent might be used for cleaning as well as
cleaning, fragrance, yeah, absolutely. So we don't think that any of this sarcophagus was exposed in the 60s apart from the top. So hopefully tomorrow we might be able to dig down a little bit and find out more about who she might have been.
So why was this young woman buried in this position? Was she alone or with others? And how big and ornate was the villa where she lived? And which, by the end of day one, we're beginning to reveal, terraced into the landscape of this beautiful part of Oxfordshire.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Want us to make more episodes? Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses, and more. And you get to have your say in the process as we develop new sites.
It's day 2 of Time Team's investigations at Broughton Castle in Oxfordshire. We're searching for what we believe to be a huge Roman villa, buried under tons of rubble.
Could pretty much rebuild the villa, couldn't we? You got it all together.
We're getting a feeling of how it was engineered into the slope of the landscape.
Rather than building the building just down the gradient of the slope, what they've done is actually terraced it in or tiered it in to the hillside.
And we've discovered evidence that some of the rooms might have been quite sumptuous.
Ah, tesserae!
Yes.
Look at that, in loads of different colours.
It's the beginning of day 2, and the team are anxious to get going on this vast site. Geophys have moved downhill to the south of the villa, looking for possible entranceways and outbuildings. Matt is extending Trench 1, looking for the northwest corner of the villa. But I'm worried. We haven't found anything solid to suggest the luxurious villa that we were hoping to find.
It's obviously a fantastic site, but are you going to give me a bit of bling? You know,
Look, if you want bling, how about that? Look at the southeast corner here. If we go to the radar, there, that's sat right at this point, the end of that corridor.
I mean, that is so clear, isn't it? So this is deep foundations of a square Roman structure. So potentially a tower, something like that, standing quite tall. On the corner of the villa, a prominent room. Now that's so clear that even I can't resist putting a trick across that.
I mean, you might think the site's sort of going downhill or something, but I mean, physically it does step down the slope, doesn't it? And what we're finding and what we'll see is the further down the slope you get, the potential is for better preservation. That range along there is a very distinct earthwork. I think we might be going downhill physically, but uphill in terms of archaeology.
So we're hopeful that we might find well-preserved remains of a tower in the southeast corner of the villa. The radar suggests it's at a slightly odd alignment, so potentially from a different phase of the building.
We can take that more flat now. No walls as yet. I mean, it could be quite deep.
And the first signs suggest that we might be looking at an earlier structure.
So this looks quite early, doesn't it? I mean, it's quite almost like a kind of early Roman or something. That's potentially quite important dating because it's just possible this feature predates the villa.
The pot's confirmed to be a large storage jar made in Britain in the 2nd or 3rd century. A nice find, but Neil would be happier if he could find evidence of the walls that showed up so clearly on the radar.
Neil to John Gator. We are opening up the trench and all we can find is yellow clay. We cannot find the square feature on the radar, and this is really perplexing.
We've got bits of charcoal starting to come up now.
Yeah.
Better news in Trench 4, we're seeing signs of something structural outside the main villa complex, and it has revealed an array of finds.
So we've got everything from bone, nice big animal bone, through to oyster shells and fine samian ware.
Oh, lovely.
And more evidence of early Roman occupation.
Excellent. That's beautiful, isn't it? Some Roman grey ware. I think it's at the earlier end of the Roman spectrum.
That's the edge of the wall just running through there,
Yeah,
is it?
as far
So
as
there's
I
more,
can tell,
there's more.
It's literally just there.
Excellent.
So we've got to take all that back to try and find where the other end of the ditch is.
Yeah, okay.
And see what it goes on and see how that relates to the walls that are coming up over there.
So you've got another wall. Oh gosh, yeah, see the edge of that there quite clearly, can't you?
Yeah.
Do you think this might be the remains of a structure of some kind, or just rubble?
I would hate to...
All right, you're hedging your bets.
I'm hedging my bets, it's safer that way.
In the northwest corner, we had hoped to find a bathhouse in Trench 1 and a conduit in Trench 3.
It was charcoal.
Yeah, still got the charcoal in it.
But Carenza's now beginning to think that she might have found an oven, suggesting more of a working area.
I think there's a story starting to come together, but at the moment it's not looking like this is the posh residential bit, certainly in its latest stage.
It changes the orientation of the building as we thought.
And if that L-shaped feature was some kind of water conduit, it's certainly been filled in with domestic rubbish afterwards.
And she'd like Naomi, our environmental archaeologist, to take a closer look at some of the charcoaly soil.
I think it'd be really interesting to see what's out there, because the working hypothesis is some sort of oven.
Right.
So if it is some sort of oven, then they might have been cooking something in it, which
I
might
do
turn
like
up.
an oven.
Well, we do our best to keep that.
Well, yes. Thank you, Gwen. That was very nice. Yeah, we've just started to get some bits of charcoal and carbonised grain out of Trench 4.
Oh, fantastic.
I'll get you some more buckets.
Yeah, could do that now.
Yep.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Excellent.
Naomi will float the sample, looking for charcoal, bone and grains to tell us what people were cooking, eating and growing here. The northwest of the villa is looking more like a working area, so perhaps the posh rooms we were expecting are in the southeast.
There was nothing
in it?
Nothing, yeah.
That's not nothing.
And in Trench 6, we found the elusive walls, and Neil's looking much happier.
There we have the wall coming through, and not only that, it's associated with painted wall plaster.
Oh my
Bling!
word. My bling.
So can you see?
Oh gosh, look at that.
You've got a white background with red paint over the top, so it's like a red stripe.
So you're really getting a sense of the quality of the decoration in this space.
So it could almost be like a geometric design of sort of stripes. So if you had enough of it, you could even make a design. So you've got another bit there. So that's the outside.
That's the outside. This is
the inside.
Look, that is the trench. There is that wall, and it's going to turn a right angle. So the interior of the building is in that direction. I would say that is spot on to the nearest millimetre.
It's close. It's close.
So all this overcomes, there's nothing in Trench 6.
There was nothing in Trench 6. When Gus was here last, we were despairing.
And I guess the lesson to learn is John's always right.
Pardon?
Nothing.
This is the first evidence that our villa might have had painted plasterwork or even frescoes on its walls.
So we've got some sand there, but we're going to break up the brick first and mix it in. And this is this lovely stuff that looks like yoghurt, but I don't advise eating it.
Even though I really like yoghurt. Just don't.
Fresco painter Aidan Hart is taking Natalie through the process involved in creating these beautiful artworks.
Lovely. You're an expert already.
It's almost like I already had frustration.
He's preparing a Roman plaster surface for his fresco, using a mixture of brick, sand and lime. It would have taken several layers of the plaster to create a smooth enough ground on which to paint his design.
Vitruvius talks about 6 to 9 layers, but really it's more like 3 different mixes of plaster, but each layer is put on 2 layers, the first really thin, then you build up the thickness.
I'm interested to see what Aidan thinks about our newly found painted plaster.
I come bearing gifts.
What?
Oh, wow!
What just came out of
Sorry, I
a
squawked
tent.
in your ear. Sorry, I put lime in your shirt.
And this
Look
is
at that.
yeah, a bit of plaster, painted plaster.
Oh, yeah, and you can turn it to the side, and you can see the big hunks in.
Oh, look at that,
really
we've done
quite
this.
coarse.
Look,
Yeah,
that's a bit of brick.
Ooh.
That's a bit of...
Probably brick, yeah. It could be a yellow brick, but yeah, but quite diverse sizes, aren't they? It looks like these are different layers. That's one layer, that could be a second medium layer. Yeah, there is, yeah. So that's actually 3 layers.
This is going to make Vitruvius happy.
This is high class, really.
Oh, really?
The likelihood is that this colourful plasterwork would have decorated the villa which we think belonged to the woman whose sarcophagus was found in the 1960s. Before we begin to excavate the coffin, Jim is running his radar over the area where Keith thinks he's located the burial, looking for signs of other burials or even a mausoleum. Aidan has chosen a portrait of a Roman lady of a similar rank and age to base his fresco on.
I'll just paint the background, you can paint the face.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
So I think
oh, I love this.
This is gorgeous, isn't
yeah, it really is.
So we know
She
that the
looks
lady
so
was
thoughtful.
30 years old, I think we found here.
Yes.
And she would have been wealthy, and
yeah, which we can see this lady is because she's got her hair decorated, she's got her earrings, and you know she's performing at the very least the idea that she's literate.
We'll mix pigments to match both the plaster from the trenches and the image of the lady.
And the purple as well, the dark reddish colour,
I think
even though we're
we'll
not going
put
to use
some
that.
of this into an earring, just for a bit of jewellery or something, do you think?
Yeah, why not?
Aside from the frescoes, there are other signs of high status decoration in the form of the tesserae we found yesterday in Trench 2. And Hilda has found some more this morning.
Oh, look, big tile tesserae. Yeah. Like from not exactly a mosaic, but a floor made of small tiles.
Exactly.
Yes, yes. So where have those come from?
They've all come from this slot. They've not been stratified or anything.
So is that an actual cut feature?
Yeah, it is a real edge. So when we was tripping this, we started on this end and we thought that this was a wall. I'm slightly less convinced now because, as you can see, it looks like a layer of rubble that keeps extending that way.
Yes, because it's not a kind of smooth top, is it? It's very choppy and it looks just like it's collapsed. So it could have been a really nice wall with really nice stones. So somebody took the nice stones and left all the rubbish. That would work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then over in this corner of the trench, we've got some sort of other edge. So the outer wall of the villa should be on that side of the trench, running that way.
Yep.
So we're hoping that this is some sort of partition wall coming in, but it seems to stop here, so that could be a doorway, perhaps.
Doorway, the holy grail, how we move around in the villa.
Exactly.
Naomi's been putting some soil from Hilda's trench through her flotation tank and found more tesserae and something else of interest.
We have carbonised grain, so we've got cereals that were being harvested and eaten sort of 2,000 years ago.
Wow.
As well as the actual cereal grains, we've got all these other different seeds, and these ones are actually from weeds that grow amongst the crops. So they can tell us sort of what time of year the crops were growing.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's been fantastic. All from just 20 litres of soil.
You're saying that they're carbonised, so that means that they've been at some point cooked or burnt. Is that correct?
It is, and that's the strange thing about it. And you think, well, why are they burning their grain? Surely they should be making it into bread or whatever. Yes. Unfortunately, sometimes your grain gets infected with grain weevils, and that's not nice for anybody. So the easiest way to destroy that is to set fire to it. So sad for the Roman people who have just lost all their grain, fantastic for us because it survives and we can see it. Okay, so the sample's going in.
And samples from Carenza's trench also contain charcoal and burnt cereals, which supports her oven theory.
So straight away, you can see it's just hit the water. And this is charcoal already, that's just coming straight to the surface.
All this adds to the evidence that this corner of the villa perhaps had a more utilitarian function than we originally thought.
It feels all a bit sort of domestic working area. There's no drinking cups or anything like that.
There's no drinking cups. There's no glass. There's no. I mean, you're missing those obvious higher status components.
Yeah, there's loose stones against the side of the wall. That'll one more of those, I reckon, John, and then that'll do on that side. Then the same on the other.
Nearby, Matt's trying to find the outer walls of the northwest corner of the villa.
Oh, that looks good.
Before he can work out what the room was used for.
What we do have is a very well-preserved wall. So as soon as we got up to here, we've got another course. Look, just here, we're up to another couple of courses at least. You can see very clearly, it comes along here. There's the edge of it. Can you see here? Very nice edge to the wall along there. So, and it kind of, we thought we had a bit of a turn there. So we've machined down to this level. There's still stones coming up here, so I thought we'd just stop here. We've got our unknown here. Just going to explore down to the unknown and see what happens. But to be honest, I can't really see anything crossing this way.
John's sketching.
Yeah. I mean, I need to get Henry to tie the trench in, but I'm sure that is going to be the right angle there. We've extended that bit of the trench, haven't we? So it's got to turn there.
So that's outside.
That's outside.
Corner of the villa, first internal room.
Yep. And then down.
Stretching down the slope.
Great.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And obviously got some interesting, I don't know quite what it's going to be, but it's, there's some stratigraphy, there's some archaeology in there, isn't there?
Definitely.
But not bathhouse yet.
There's still no sniff of a bathhouse up here at all.
Well, that'll please Stuart.
We might have lost the bathhouse, but we found the corner of the villa. And now we're looking for a west wing, which appeared in John's magnetometry, but wasn't convincing in Jimmy's radar.
There's a little bit of something coming in here. It's a bit of a different colour through there, but it doesn't seem to be very wide. And then by the point when you get out here, there's nothing again. And basically there's nothing in the whole of the rest of the trench. So the answer to the question of did the villa have a west wing at the moment seems to be no.
The footprint of the villa is still uncertain, so we're looking for help with interpreting the geophys by comparing John's survey with the floor plan of North Lee, a nearby villa of a similar size which has been fully excavated.
If I bring in North Lee, exactly the same scale.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's really similarly, I mean, in terms of archaeologists, this is the same size.
Well, it's the same size, but North Lee has got ranges on 3 sides, and on that side, perhaps just a corridor with a gatehouse. At the moment, we're only really looking at 2. But what we do know about North Lee is that it started off as a series of separate buildings, which were then joined up and added onto.
As they got more money
Yeah,
over time, or
yeah.
as they got more ambitious over time?
Or both,
yeah.
I think.
Okay, so what comes first when you have this? So I'm assuming if you're building a big villa, you build a fancy dining room, right? Because you want to show off to the neighbours and you need bedrooms. But everything else is a bit more add-on.
Optional extras almost. You don't have to have a bathhouse, which Northley has here.
But from the trenches, we don't think we've got a bathhouse in that north range. We may have the posh house.
Oh, okay, so we thought it was up here, but now we don't think that because...
seems to be the case.
Yeah.
Does that mean there isn't one, or does that mean it might be somewhere else?
Well, look, Jimmy's extended the radar down the hill where the water supply is, and we have got, well, it looks like a separate bathhouse. Now, is that feasible?
That's fine. You know, the thing with bathhouses, fire, they catch fire.
Yeah.
So actually having it separate from your house is very health and safety conscious.
Yeah, it's true. It's the fire that you should be worrying about in a Roman environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the hunt for the bathhouse moves to Trench 10, where Jimmy's radar shows something that ticks all the boxes.
We've got this sort of rectangular building here. You can see there's some parallel wall lines in there. But what's of interest to us is there something actually extending off to the west, which would be behind you?
Right.
And also the potential for something curving through there. So the question was whether that tied up with anything in the magnetic data.
Right.
So
John.
when you look at the mag, these black responses are very strong. So there we've got the building and the possible extensions coming this way. This is part of the elliptical feature.
Right.
And the very strong magnetic responses are here.
Which means what?
That looks as though it's been fired, burning, so it could be part of the heating system for the bathhouse.
Yeah, because before we thought it was what we call an aisle building, where you have a central room with flanking corridors. But the new evidence is showing stuff coming this way. So we're going to take a trench which catches the edge of what we thought was the aisle building and heads into this kind of heart of darkness, this black splodge.
Thank goodness we're not getting melodramatic on day 2. I would hate it if that happened.
We're only just below the surface, and already we're hitting what could be walls of the aisle building.
Happy with that, Chris? Is it a wall?
Looks good for a wall to me, yeah.
Right. We're going into
the heart of darkness, yeah. We've gone full Conrad over here.
If this is a bathhouse in Trench 10, perhaps it was fed by a series of ponds that Stuart has identified.
It looks like we've got water being managed, stepping down the valley, leading to a possible bathhouse at the bottom, I suspect. So we've got...
Adam's going to send his drone up to survey the area in question.
So I'm very keen to get a much more detailed model of this to enable us to work out precisely what's there and visualise it better. Okay. So do you think you'll be able to concentrate purely on that area there for me?
The model will help Stuart to identify exactly where the ponds, dams and channels might be. The villa's only a few fields away from Broughton Castle itself, and while we're here, we can't resist the opportunity to try to solve some of its architectural mysteries, including the location of a room known as the Room That Hath No Ears. It was used during the Civil War of 1642 by William Fiennes, who was secretly plotting against the king.
We know from a historian at the time that they met at Broughton, and he described it as in the room which hath no ears. So you've got 3 walls that drop vertically down 3 or 4 stories to the ground. Right. All you need is one loyal servant on the door and no one's overhearing your treasonable conversations.
Susie's heard about a room on the other side of the castle that may have been another contender as the Room That Hath No Ears.
I liken it to one of those boats you see hanging off the back of super yachts. This is our little house sitting on the top of the castle.
So here's another possibility. So which was it? It's amazing to think that in either room
these people met and plotted treason, and if they would have been heard, it would certainly have led to their deaths.
Absolutely. No, this was dangerous conversations.
Adam's photogrammetry is throwing light on which room would ultimately have been most suitable for plotting.
I suppose we ought to compare with the other one, but I like the fact that it just looks so isolated there that it feels like that might, it's called the room that has no ears, so it's where you can't be overheard, because otherwise you are going to be hung, drawn and quartered. So that one's a really good candidate when you see it from that perspective.
It does feel very isolated out there, doesn't it?
Arch-plotter William Fiennes raised a regiment against the crown and fought with his 4 sons at the Battle of Edge Hill.
Here we are.
Oh my goodness.
Keith Westcott discovered an important hoard of coins relating to this part of the castle's history when he was investigating a potential extra crossing over the moat, which he'd noticed in an etching.
There were 16 of them, and they go back to James I and finish at around the time of Charles I. So the thought at that point was that it was a Civil War hoard, but there were some special coins in here which you didn't really expect to see in Oxfordshire.
3 of the coins were Spanish, minted in the Netherlands and thought to have belonged to Charles I's wife, Queen Henrietta, who had fled the country to the Netherlands to raise money for the war effort. The couple were reunited near Broughton.
They made their way to Roxton Abbey, which is only 2 miles away, and the King and Queen stopped there. It was the first time they'd been together for over a year, and we believe that somehow these coins were passed on through to someone at the castle.
These coins show what an important part metal detectorists can play in contributing to the historical record.
So it's right.
So it's definitely...
Oh, I can see something.
Yep.
And this is proving the case at the villa site too.
Can you see? I mean, we've got this sort of greeny, which suggests copper alloy, but that silver bit there, potentially, that looks quite silvery, Peter. What do you reckon? This might be a denarius.
The coins are so small, they're easy to miss and require careful cleaning to identify and to date them.
And I can see on the reverse as well, we've got a single figure standing, holding something. And again, I think with a bit of research, actually, I might be able to nail what this coin is, actually.
Matt's use of photogrammetry to enhance the detail of the coin helps Danny to identify it as a denarius. We're hoping that coins will help us phase the building of the villa, so we're mapping exactly where they were found.
Just archaeology's power to surprise.
Carenza has now found what could be the foundations of a wall line in the West Wing.
Can you stand on the end of your wall?
It seems to line up with the northwest corner of the villa in Matt's trench. And the theory is that it's the width of a garden wall. It's possible that we're looking at something a bit more industrial than we originally thought, and Raysan's considering how this will impact the 3D reconstruction.
But there are some wonderful examples of buildings that the Romans did which were terraced, and they had industrial purposes for doing that as well. Because that jet within the steps. So I'd be interested to see whether it is a combination of working building and residential. As a combination. I know villas are essentially farmhouses in some respects, and so they are. Whether we get that sort of combination of activities in one place.
But also seeing whether you've got an earlier, smaller villa with the farmscape, which then gets embellished into a much larger. Got these rich goods, which sounds like maybe that's what Matt might be kind of on the cusp of determining. Hey.
Raysan's reconstruction will be picked up by Stuart Eve, who's exploring various ways that virtual reality can be used to push the bounds of archaeology, both on site and for the viewer at home.
This is where it gets dangerous.
That's right. That's all right. I'll watch out for you. There you go.
We're also creating virtual models of the castle, using Adam's photogrammetry, Matt's 3D photography, and the laser scans that Lawrence and Derek have been conducting. The laser scan has revealed something intriguing about the blocked-up doorway halfway up the 14th century stairs to the chapel, which appears to relate to a peculiar kink in the wall.
But as you come down here, you can see that this building actually bows out ever so slightly, as if there was something there, something of interest. So potentially a room that's missing with this sealed up window, the sealed up door, perhaps being on an outside exterior wall.
Yes, because otherwise that makes a lot of sense. Because otherwise, why would you have gone out like that unless there was something there that you were going around?
And that does fit quite neatly if we step into the 3D. You can see there that that's the kind of the shadow of this doorway here, or the sealed up doorway or window, and that correlates quite neatly with that kink coming around here, just where something would have come through there. So it's as if it's respecting whatever was there before.
So that suggests that what was here before is 12 something or other. We don't know. I mean, at the latest.
Well, but one thing we haven't said just yet, we will be able to calculate the void between underneath the stairs, so we'll actually be able to see how big a space is actually underneath there and it has been lost or repurposed.
It's just such vital information in terms of giving a true history of the house and really being able to date back beyond what we know in terms of documentary evidence.
There are definitely some more stories here.
Yeah.
That's that little hair.
Yes.
All this is offering Martin and Lord Say and Seal a very different perspective on their castle and its history.
And so maybe that's the room which hath no ears. Where they plotted the Civil War away from any prying listeners. Wow. It's fantastic, isn't it? I think you're the only person who's 101 who's seen their house on a photogrammetry.
By the end of day 2, we've extended Trench 10 into the heart of darkness, where we've discovered the skull of a horse.
So you've got the edge cutting down, and then we've got this horse's head. So it's just a head.
No one else thinking of The Godfather. I mean, literally nobody except me.
So there's a water feature that Stuart outlines that comes down this hill. So this ditch would seem to be kind of like a sort of natural continuation of that in terms of the camber of the land. Why would you then want to place a horse's head here?
It must be something to do with like superstition or ritual or even kind of informal magic, that perhaps laying down some part of a animal has some meaning which is lost to us.
Exactly why there's a horse's head in a pond is one of the many questions we need to answer tomorrow, including where the bathhouse was and whether the villa had a southern range. And we still need to take a look at the sarcophagus where the lady who once lived here was laid to rest. And Jimmy's radar is showing hints of something intriguing near where he thinks she was buried.
I am currently standing at the very top corner of this massive Roman villa, and just to give you a sense of the scale, there's Gus, hey Gus, at the bottom end, and Jimmy, hi Jimmy, who's been doing all of this radar hunting at the furthest corner, so you can get an idea of the enormous scale of what we've been working on. I have no idea what I should be promising you will happen tomorrow. All I can really say is that you should expect the unexpected.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses, and more. Please join us on this exciting journey. We need more support to make more episodes.
It's day 3 of our dig at Broughton Castle in Oxfordshire. We've discovered substantial walls and wings of a huge Roman villa. and evidence that it was decorated with mosaics and frescoes.
This is going to make Vitruvius happy.
Wow, this is high class, really.
Oh, really? But so far, it seems that the four-sided villa that we were expected might actually be two-sided.
It's not showing a lot of buildings on the south and on the west.
But Stuart is convinced that there's a spectacular series of ponds terraced into the landscape.
These are so exciting to me because they are very, if that's what they might be, they are very, very rare indeed.
It's day 3 and just a matter of hours left to find out how many sides the villa had and whether any of its posh interior remains intact.
I want to try and get in there and try and see what those finds might reveal. I think there are some interesting stories that we could unravel.
Yeah, speaking of which, I need to go back and check out the sarcophagus, which started this whole thing. How do we forget her? This is Women in History, guys.
Metal detectorists are checking the area in which the sarcophagus was found. Then we can carefully expose the stone coffin to see if we can add anything to what was recorded when she was discovered in the 1960s. We're also expanding Trench 10, where we found the horse's head yesterday, and which could be at the bottom of an elaborate series of ponds.
We're standing here at the moment. There's the villa.
Yep.
And you can see that it's been artificially created into a series of rectangles up the valley. And if you look at the wider area, you can see how the natural channels are all higgledy-piggledy, whereas these are extremely
super neat and
Roman. So, for instance, the pond at the top can feed water off at a higher level because it's higher than the villa up on the hill, so you can get water to the villa up there. The middle level could feed water off into another level, and a lower level, of course, can feed a bathhouse if there was one down here. So it's a whole kind of water management system, stepping down the slope in stages. So as well as being decorative, it's very functional as well.
Yeah.
And each of these ponds that are in the valley, to be able to stop them flooding over and causing chaos, they have to have channels that take the water around when it's really rainy and wet and everything. So you expect overflow channels to flow down the side as well.
Look at the magnetics. Now we've expanded the survey. You can see all these water channels that Stuart's been talking about coming down the valley on different terraces, and the main channel at the bottom following this alignment, and you can see it's immediately below these really nice responses here, and the suggestion that that is sort of the drainage channel going down to the stream on the eastern side of the site.
It's really incredible. You can even see the dams that we were talking about. They're perfect straight lines.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing.
So the thing is, would they be feeding just a bathhouse?
You could have a bathhouse, you could have a mill even, you could have fish ponds.
So it could be a more practical space.
What's the most important thing here? Is it the villa or is it the water? Because to me, this just seems out of all proportion to the size of the villa. Maybe this is a productive landscape.
Maybe it's part of its own economy here.
Yeah, it's an economy around water management, fish maybe, marine products.
This is likely to be in the final phase though, isn't it, Neil, when the villa's at its height?
But maybe the fact that you've got that little aisled building right next door to the pond or whatever it is down there,
that's the processing plant.
It's too much of a coincidence.
This engineered landscape must have been a very important element of life within the villa. So, with less than a day to go, we're putting another trench in to try and find out whether the ponds were industrial or decorative.
You just pour it in first. Yeah, just stand back.
Yeah, that's messy.
Right.
And Naomi's processing a sample of the soil from Trench 10.
This is that very clay, gloopy stuff, isn't it, from beneath the horse's head? It is quite gloopy. Look at that straight away. I've not even touched it. Not even touched it.
Oh yeah.
This is carbonised grain.
Oh my goodness.
So we've got more cereals.
I mean, as to why the grain is in there, if it's being moved by water, is interesting. But it's definitely in there. And I've had seeds from most of the trenches, so there's definitely an agricultural element going on here. It's what you call seed extravaganza.
I do love 2,000-year-old grains.
The sheer number of grains found in this trench alone supports the idea that agriculture might have been part of the economy of the villa, and the pottery is suggesting that this was in use over many centuries.
My sense of it when I saw the sherds coming out of the ground was that there was quite a lot of 2nd century material, and some of it fairly certainly is, but we have at least now got a decent sort of later 3rd into 4th century component.
While the finds are beginning to tell the story of life in the villa, it's hard work trying to understand the archaeology, as Matt is discovering in Trench 1, where he's been trying to find out where the walls stop and the floors start.
So the problem that I've been having with this wall here, it's a beautiful wall, very clear, lovely Roman villa wall, but where was the floor? Where were people standing? And it's been really, really annoying me for a couple of days, but I think I've nailed it. See here, we've dug right into the corner there, we have beautifully faced stone. So that's probably a bit of upstanding wall, I reckon. You would not have that underground. You've got the wall coming along here. Very nice, very nice. And then these courses are a bit wobbly, a bit out of place, so I think they're probably sitting within a foundation cut. But if you go all the way along to here, you can see this course of stones is sticking out, and I think that is where the foundation is. So that's upstanding wall, and that's the floor level at last. And on the other side of this wall, you can see the stones, or the foundation stones, sticking out there. And so that's our floor level on the other side. What have we got?
Sorry to interrupt. Is there anything?
Oh my goodness me! You just find that?
Yeah, just in here.
Just in there?
Just in the rubble.
Heck, look at that. It's a, well, I would say that's bronze, isn't it? Some kind of copper alloy, you can tell by the green. And I think, if you look carefully, there's actually some decoration on the middle.
Post-excavation, this piece was taken for X-ray fluorescence analysis, which showed a very high lead content, probably from solder attaching a mirror surface to the decorative back. It would be lovely to think that the face reflected in it might have belonged to Our Lady in the sarcophagus. And perhaps she was using the oil from the Unguit Bottle, found buried with her when she was first discovered in the 1960s. The farmer who found her remembers that day well.
Well, we were ploughing the field, knocked a corner off, went up and there was a stone, knocked a corner off it. I thought, well, funny, so I got off and had a look. I could see it was a coffin, so I put my hand in, pulled 2 bones out. They were thigh bones, and thought, well, better put them back in. So I did. And there was a smelling bottle in there, which is now in the Ashmolean Museum, I understand. Yeah.
Yes.
And at the time, they said it was the first one found outside Syria.
Wow.
That's what they said, but whether that was right, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's not the case now. There's lots more of them, but maybe it was right in 1963. Yeah. It just underlines how important and cosmopolitan this place is, with links so far.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you found it, did it have any iron fittings on top?
Yeah, it got 6, I believe. I thought it was 6.
Ooh, we certainly picked up
holding the stone,
because
there was a stone on top of that, you see, which was about 4 inches thick.
What would be very interesting to know is whether she's on her own, or whether there are other burials here that are perhaps a little bit deeper, which no one's encountered yet.
No, the only thing was, being a lead-lined coffin, she was obviously somebody very important, wasn't she?
Absolutely. Yeah. The bottle, the lead lining, the stone coffin.
Lead's still in there.
Yes, it produced a very good signal from the metal detecting. Very loud, very long.
Yeah.
Jimmy's radar shows hints that there might have been a road beside the sarcophagus, or even possibly some sort of building, but it's hard to be sure. We found evidence of buildings which correspond to the geophys in the northern range and the eastern range, but what seems to be a garden wall in the west. But the radar also suggests possible buildings in the southern range. So Carenza has put in another trench to see whether we can find anything, but nothing solid has materialised so far. The evidence in the trenches and the radar suggests that the villa was probably remodelled over centuries. And coins found on site might help us to date these building phases.
And so we've been able to date this coin to within 5 years. So it dates between AD 330 and 335.
The latest coin depicts Constantine II and represents a period when there are a huge amount of coins in circulation.
This is a fine looking man, isn't it? I mean, it's just such a beautiful coin.
The spread of coins found by the metal detectorists is beginning to reveal when different parts of the villa were in use.
But I'm going to start off with first century coins. Now, very few.
Yes.
And if it was in use in the first century, there would be more. But there aren't as many coins in use in Britain in the first century as later. If you add in second century coins, again, it's background noise. If we add in the third century coins, though, this is when the villa gets going. And you can really see that there's people losing coins around the villa buildings in the third century, but a lot of them are being lost down here in the south. What is happening here that means that people are losing more coins? Are there more people? Are they more careless? Are the coins smaller, lower value? Then when we add in the 4th century, there's lots of these green ones, and you can't really see the pattern. But look, if we take out the 1st and the 2nd and the 3rd, the North Range is seeing the large amount of coin loss in the 4th century, but in the 3rd century, more is being lost in the south. So I would guess that something is changing. Maybe a south range is going out of use.
Yes.
Maybe a north range is being built. But the two together...
Perhaps the buildings along the southern range, suggested by Jimmy's radar, might have gone out of use by the time the villa was in its heyday, in the latter part of the Roman period.
So I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit, because these are obviously, I think, fairly wealthy or well-off people. Are they farmers, traders? What are we thinking?
Well, one of the theories, actually, that Sam Moorhead of the British Museum actually supports is that perhaps England at this time was the breadbasket of the Roman Empire, and actually a lot of villas were in charge of growing grain. They were making wheat that was then going out, being turned into bread to feed the Roman army, particularly on the Rhine. And so one of the ideas of this explosion of Roman villas during the 4th century comes down to that.
So if this is true, perhaps the Isle building near Trench 10 was something to do with grain manufacture.
Coming this way? Yeah, it looked more like it was going like there before sort of thing, and that's it's quite nice actually.
Martin Fiennes has joined Theo to investigate a line of stones which appear to be protecting the building from the ponds and correspond to the curving feature on the geophys. And just next door, in Trench 11, the first signs of a causeway and another pond are beginning to emerge along with a thin wall.
That might actually just be revetment with a pond on that side, because this rise up here, you can see where my white car is there. Yes. Beyond it drops down again. This is, in effect, the bottom dam holding water back up there. You can see all the damp area, that's the remnant of it.
Yeah.
So there's like a corridor that comes through here that might actually be an entrance.
Okay.
Ponds on that side, pond that side.
Yeah.
So this might actually be, in effect, a land surface. Yeah. And then that might be revetting it to hold it back. I mean, it's just an idea.
Okay.
By lunchtime on day 3, Hilda's beginning to get to grips with the complicated archaeology in Trench 2 in the northeast corner of the villa.
But I am here, standing in a room.
Right. And what kind of finds? Anything that talks about high status? We've got any sort of status finds?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got lots of box flue tiles, which suggest a heating system, small tesserae from this area, larger tesserae from the other corner of the trench, suggesting a mosaic. So I would say that's a pretty high status room, lots of domestic refuse. So it could be a dining area.
Yeah.
And I'm still working away here, and we think there's actually an internal wall here, and it might be several phases. So I've got one line coming in here, but then it suddenly jumps over. There's another line here, and then yet another one there. So they may have been kind of changing up the rooms a bit.
But you'd expect that, because if you think this villa could have been in use for something like 250 years, you're not going to leave it untouched. It could be changing and constantly evolving over time.
So it's possible that this was the dining room in which Our Lady entertained. We've now exposed more of her coffin, and it looks like the lid might have had some decoration on it.
We're just revealing up the sarcophagus really nicely here, but we're coming onto a number of bits of sort of erratic bits of limestone, which we think might be surviving parts of the lids, and you can see where that would have been previously there with the iron bracket. But it seems like it's decorated, so there are 3 line depressions, and then 3 ridges, possibly a 4th one just there. I mean, it could be beautiful.
Only an important and wealthy family would have been able to afford a decorated stone coffin such as this, curved at the end and with a lead lining. Her burial would have justified an elaborate ceremony. The grave would probably not have been hidden away as it is now, but may have been raised up from the ground and marked by some sort of monument to remember her by. Aidan has been putting a face to the lady by creating a Roman-style fresco based on the painted plaster we found yesterday in Trench 6.
Yeah, so I've just put on what the Greeks call the proplasmos, the first layer, which is translucent but flat. So now we're just starting the highlighting. So we'll alternate between highlighting, shadow, highlighting, shadow.
I am so nervous.
So keep away from the fingers and just pretend that's the garment.
That's all I can see.
You can do it.
I don't want to ruin your fingers, they're so good.
There's going to be a lot of work on the fingers, so no matter. It's better to go a little bit over the finger than not at all. We don't want a sort of white.
Oh!
Oh, you're fired!
Well, here it is. It's in this little box.
Okay.
The metaverse, and you're going to step into it, okay?
Stuart, Eve, Raysan and Matt have been modelling the villa to explore how virtual reality can be used to help visualise what we're finding in the trenches.
I feel a bit nervous.
If you're going to be sick, let me know.
Oh my God, it's like being in some futuristic world, and yet behind I can see this Roman villa. It feels a bit like being at sea, you know, it's a bit sort of seasickness feeling, but I kind of like it.
You can walk around a little bit.
Can I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll make sure you don't crash
But
into
yeah, I
anything,
don't want to hit anybody. Okay, so I'm looking down the slope now, I think. I'm kind of looking out, down the bottom. I've got the colonnade and the portico on one side of me, on the other, and it is kind of extraordinary. You are kind of walking through the past.
And with this model, Neil, we can change. So when anything changes in the archaeology, we can start adding extra wings or a new tower or anything like that. Or if mosaics turn up, we can put them in so you can walk on them virtually at least.
God, it's fantastic. I mean, it really is. I guess this is the future of the past.
Details will help to flesh out this reconstruction, and Danny's picked out some of her favourite finds that show quite how luxurious this villa might have been in its heyday.
So just to show you here, here's a roof tile. How fantastic is that? It's even intact with the hole where it would have been nailed to the roof. How heavy is that?
That is really heavy.
And there would have been hundreds of these, all lining the roof, keeping it nice and watertight, hopefully.
These tiles required a steeper pitch than the clay tiles, and in some local buildings, both were used within the same structure. And whilst the tiles kept the rooms dry, the hypocaust kept them warm.
The hypocaust is the underfloor heating, but it would have come up through the walls. So this box flue here would have been on the walls, heating the walls up, going up vertically. And actually on this example, there's a little side inlet here, actually. Yeah. So the air would have actually been flowing horizontally as well as vertically.
Under the floor, the air flowed between the stacks of tiles, like this one we found with a little dog paw print.
I love that. That's like a snapshot in time, isn't it? You can just imagine this dog sort of legging it across. Would have made the craftsman preparing it quite angry, I should imagine.
And above this was another layer of tiles on which was laid a mosaic floor.
Oh, the tesserae.
The tesserae, which is, formed the mosaic on the floor. We've got lovely different colours here. So we've got oranges, we've got whites or greys, and the different sizes probably correlate to whereabouts it is in the mosaic. So these quite probably went around the border, and then you had the finer pieces for the more decorative elements in the centre.
And another wonderful detail for our virtual reconstruction has survived.
We've even got window glass.
What? No.
How cool is that? So look at this here, 2 pieces of Roman window glass.
That is, and it is so fine as well. It is so, you would imagine that was a modern piece of glass.
And amongst the building's rubble are personal touches that connect us to the people living in the villa.
This is a lovely bit of a beaker, a drinking vessel, very fine ware. This is the base, and just on it here you can see a thumbprint where the potter who made this dipped it into the slip.
Glorious.
And it's left the impression of his or her thumbprint.
See, that's the beauty of archaeology, isn't it? That you want to get close to people in the past, to transcend the gap across the 2,000 years or so since this was created. And then you see something like that, and you just feel so connected.
Yes.
And the more we reveal of her villa, the closer we feel to the lady in the sarcophagus.
So, talk me through what you found. That's the metal clamp I was reading about, right?
Yeah, so we found 4 of the ones that we know about. So we've got the one there, a very bent one on the far end, another one here, and another one here.
Oh my goodness.
And it looks like they're going down around the outside of the stone sarcophagus. And we've got the top bit exposed really nicely, but the bottom is still hidden away under this rubble.
So did they hold the lid on originally?
Yeah, that's right. And we think we've still got bits of the lid still around that have been broken up. Yeah, we believe so. And there's a really nice example of why we think that. So this is one of the bits of stone that were placed here, which beautifully flat on one side and then shaped on the edge there. And if we use our imagination a bit, you can see
it just slots
that slot would have gone in just there and gone all the way around. So really nice to come back down, and we're even finding bits of possibly carved stone. I don't know if you can see these ridges on these 2 bits of stones. So there's a story coming out already. Yeah. It's lovely archaeology. Yeah. Even getting a slight hint of the lead lining over the end here.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. And so she wasn't tall, was she? She was only 5 foot nothing.
Very small.
So.
You can't imagine a modern human fitting in today. Sort of expect to find the foot end down here, we suspect.
We're deep into the afternoon, and we have substantial walls in the north and in the east, but there's nothing like them in the trenches in the southern range. What is much clearer is the detail of the pond system in trenches 10 and 11.
The line of stones that we had, we've cleaned up around them. Your suggestion of with them dividing the 2 different areas either side of them being some kind of revetment alongside the causeway does seem to hold true at the moment.
So that should hold back the water originally as well, shouldn't it?
Yes.
This is the same fill we looked at earlier on, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So the kind of upper fill of the pond, yeah. So in this little test pit down the bottom here, we've got down to the natural and just found a little sequence of layers filling the pond, started from a kind of sandy initial fill while it was still in use and then kind of gradually silting up.
Good, it's got a nice shallow pond coming down this direction. How did this resolve itself in Villa Trench?
So again, we've got some dark pond fills down this end of the trench. Geophysics suggests that it's a separate pond from the one in the last trench.
Right.
And you can see we put a much larger sondage in that one over there.
Which has become a pond.
Which has become a pond, yes.
Okay. This looks particularly interesting.
Yeah, so I think the kind of larger curving line of stones there is possibly the edge of the pond. They've kind of put that there as a kind of to hold it back or to
stabilise it, stop it slipping in.
Okay. And then we seem to have this kind of roughly cobbled surface here. which I think possibly did extend all the way across this kind of patch where it seems to have been robbed out now.
Do you think it's some sort of pathway or something?
I think so, yeah, some kind of, at least a walking surface around the pond. And then that seems to come all the way up to this, which is the western wall of the aisle building, which is then beyond us.
So the proximity of this aisle building and the ponds in a line like this perhaps suggests this building has something to do with the process that's going on here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know what, but
no.
That's really good. I mean, those two trenches have really answered the question about, are there two ponds? Yes, there are two ponds.
Yes, yeah.
Naomi's post-excavation work suggested that the horse's head in the first pond was buried with grains around it. So her theory is that it might have been linked to the October horse ceremony, marking the end of the agricultural and military campaigning seasons. This supports Danny's idea that the villa might have earned its wealth by supplying grain to the military bases across the empire. So perhaps the impressive water management system was all part of this manufacturing process. With time running out, Neil's drawing together all of the evidence that we have for the villa, starting in the northwest corner, which we originally thought would be a bathhouse.
You were hoping to find the bathhouse.
Yeah.
But actually what we've got is this really well-preserved Roman building. Can you see this fantastic Roman wall coming across here? And in the corner, can you see the very clear corner? So this is the inside of a range of rooms going down the hill. That's outside.
And this room that we're actually in now, how big would it have been?
I think it would have come out to about here, and at least 10 rooms or something, stretching down the hillside as far as Hilda's Trench, all terracing down, cutting down the slope.
Yes. So this is a suite of luxurious, really well proportioned rooms used for local bigwigs, entertaining family.
I think public rooms.
Yes.
And then also perhaps some more private chambers. And here at the opposite corner, we've still got the outside wall that we saw in Matt's trench going along. Can you see that
Absolutely.
row of stones?
Yes.
And then we've got another well-appointed room here.
So what this might have been a sort of dining room, eating quarters.
Yeah. And then the building turns the corner again and now heads off across this way.
It's just vast though, Neil.
It's a huge thing, isn't it? Now in the opposite corner, this peg marks a large square feature that we saw on the radar. So one wall here, but it keeps coming. It's a huge room.
This is vast.
And it comes across, and here's the opposite corner. So I think we could be talking about a kind of pavilion, perhaps a tower room. And you know, what a great place to kind of look out across the landscape, have your sundowner drink, but also to be seen as well. But the big discovery was we thought this originally had 4 wings. This wing has kind of disappeared. You know, we just haven't found any evidence of a range of rooms on this side. And indeed in this trench it just looks like rough deposits of farmyard or metalling. But I guess it means we've got a very open aspect on this side of the villa.
But doesn't that speak to the poetry of this particular place, that you have this spectacular villa on a hillside and then all facing out toward the south with a water feature cutting through in the mid-distance, and then beyond, on that hill opposite, some sort of marker to the ancestors. I think that's beautiful.
The further we dig around the sarcophagus, the more it becomes evident that such an important monument needs more time than we have left to us. We hope to return at a later date to re-examine the burial and the environmental evidence around it. Aidan's depiction of Our Lady gives us at least a glimpse into what she might have looked like.
We had those bits of plaster that we pulled up out of the ground just yesterday. And then here you get a sense of what it must have looked like.
Yeah, Our Lady in the sarcophagus. Just seeing some lovely bright eyes makes her seem just a bit more real.
And 2,000 years later, the current landowners are able to connect with her through the finds.
So that's made in France and imported over into Britain. It's called Samian ware. It's like they've got very best bone china. See how glossy and red it is?
Yes, and fine. Can we take it one step further and extract sound from some of these pieces?
Sound?
Yes, then we know what they were saying.
Many And these are some of the coins that came up. This is a really nice one, which is a silver denarius. And
that is nice.
The coin dates from around AD 221 to 235.
Okay.
Do you know, I was forgetting to breathe when I held that. Do you know the feeling? I'm sure you do.
That's why everyone wants to become an archaeologist, that feeling that you're the first person to see something in 2,000 years.
Yes, yes.
Can you imagine how cross you'd be when you dropped it?
Is that 2,000?
Yes.
I can't hear anything.
Over the last 3 days, the combination of aerial surveys, geophys and good old-fashioned excavation has given us a glimpse into the life of an important Roman landmark. The luxurious villa that we've found might be slightly smaller than we thought, but it's still vast, and it's a fascinating example of Roman engineering and landscaping. We know that some of the internal decoration was opulent, with mosaics and painted plaster. Although we didn't find the bathhouse, we know that there was one somewhere, and post-excavation work revealed that it might have been near to Trench 2. But the setting was perhaps the most impressive and unique feature about the estate, with ponds and water meadows terraced into the hillside, perhaps for milling and fulling. And maybe one day we will return to find out more about the lady who lived and died here.
She would have enjoyed the beautiful views across this incredible valley, but about 350 things began to change.
The villa was decaying, the Romans were leaving, and over the next 1,000 years, this beautiful site disappeared from view.
For all of us, it's been a privilege to spend the last 3 days getting to know this extraordinary landscape and the villa that must have meant so much to the lady in the sarcophagus.
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan-funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.